My show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness, brilliant.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. The latest A-level results have seen the number of top grades awarded to students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland fall since last year. Despite that, they do remain higher than pre-pandemic levels. UCAS revealed that the number of students accepted at universities and colleges has also dropped. Union bosses say strike action will continue until a settlement is reached. More than 40,000 rail workers walked out today and will again on Saturday in a dispute over pay and conditions. Public transport in London will also be affected by industrial action tomorrow. Greater Manchester Police have released a third image of a man they wish to speak to in connection with a sexual assault on a 6-year-old girl. The child was taken into a wooded area in Droylsden at around 4 p.m. yesterday and then to a van where she was attacked. She was reunited with her family shortly after and is receiving specialist support. Parents are being warned to be extra vigilant with their children. Police have searched a house in connection with the fatal stabbing of an 87-year-old man in West London. Officers carrying forensic equipment were seen entering the property earlier. Thomas O'Halloran was riding his mobility scooter when the incident occurred on Tuesday. Detectives say a 44-year-old man has been detained in relation to the killing. He was arrested at an address in Southall in the early hours of this morning. British travellers struggled to check in for flights today after the NHS app and website went down. Users trying to access their vaccination records found the service unavailable, with no alternative to access their information. Despite the NHS COVID pass being scrapped earlier this year, it's still required when travelling to certain countries such as Spain and the Netherlands. Almost 1,000 Albanian criminals and immigration offenders have been deported from the UK so far this year. That's according to the latest Home Office figures. Those removed on recent flights include offenders convicted of rape, sexual offences involving children, kidnap and serious assault. The Home Secretary says the latest figures should serve as a warning to all foreign national offenders. 2 people are dead and 5 missing after the car they were travelling in was swept away by flash floods in Pakistan. The search is underway in the port city of Karachi. Rescue officials say the body of a 10-year-old boy and a 7-year-old girl have been recovered. The Met Office predicts more heavy monsoon rains for tomorrow in 2 Pakistani provinces. And the man accused of stabbing novelist Salman Rushdie in New York has pled not guilty to charges of second-degree attempted murder and assault. 24-year-old Hadi Matar is accused of wounding the 75-year-old just before he was about to deliver a lecture. Rushdie sustained severe injuries, including nerve damage in his arm and wounds to his liver. The attack came 33 years after a fatwa was issued against Mr. Rushdie over the publication of his book, The Satanic Verses. Matar's next court appearance is scheduled for the 7th of September. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Time now for headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Josh Howie and I'm very lucky to be joined by two very funny and clever comedians to go through tomorrow's newspapers. I'm sure we're not all going to agree about everything, and that is the point. First, we have Headliners stalwart and fitness guru Leo Kearse, and making his making his Headliners debut as one of my favourite stand-ups, Dane Baptiste. Welcome to Headliners, Dane.
Thank you for having me. A long-time listener, first-time caller. So looking forward to this.
Brilliant. Well, before we get into it, let's go on with tomorrow's front pages. And we are going to start with Friday's Daily Mail. 43,000 scrambling for place at university. And also a picture of Joan Rivers looking pretty fit at 104. Friday's Telegraph. Lockdown feared to be killing more than COVID, which I'm sure that's going to be covered quite a lot. And first self-driving cars on roads next year, says Shaps. Friday's Guardian, water bonuses rose 20% amid pollution failings. That is arguably criminal, but not legally. Please don't sue me. And top A-level grades fall as regional gap widens. Friday's Financial Times has city watchdogs face big overhaul in Truss's attack on technocrats, and Trump's executive's guilty plea in tax case adds to legal woes of former president. Just don't ask Nick Dixon about it. Now we're going to do Friday's Mirror. Has David Wakely, 87, lay outside waiting for an ambulance, cold and in pain for 15 hours. His family built a tent from a football goal to cover him through the night. What has become of our country? What indeed? It's a terrible story. The Times leads with overseas hiring spree to rescue care homes, and A-levels appeals loom as top grades fall, which we're going to be covering. And Daily Express leads with Truss promises new laws to smash strike misery, and the A-Team, 425,000 now bound for university. Good luck, everybody, and have fun and learn and maybe drink some alcohol. Friday's Star has cost of living crisis. Wish you weren't here. Save bills on energy bills by renting in Europe. And that is all the stories. To Friday's Telegraph, and it seems it's not just us and our viewers who are totally sick of this leadership race, Dane.
Yes, in a recent story in the Telegraph, the Tory leadership race is too long and should be wrapped up quicker, says Liz Truss ally in the form of James Cleverly, who is the current Education Secretary and former party chairman of the Conservative Party, who thinks that it's taken way too long and should have been better for the process to be wrapped up a lot quicker. This government has been accused of being somewhat of a zombie government because they've been dragging their feet in terms of selecting the latest leader. Tories have said, the Conservative Party have said that we have to wait for the new Prime Minister before we can deal with the cost of living crisis, because this seems to be the biggest objection that people have with the longevity of the current race for leader of the party and our next Prime Minister.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it's been detrimental to our country, Leo?
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, it's 8 weeks, which is a long time. I mean, it's a long time for anything, never mind politics. And so it's given, because the race has gone through various rounds and it's got quite bitter at times, so they've been picking holes in each other, which means that whoever actually takes on the mantle of Prime Minister will have all this criticism. They're coming in a wave of criticism instead of, a sort of fresh start. Everybody's just had all this bad stuff exposed about them. And also, Boris is really sort of he's just gone on holiday. He's gone on holiday twice. He's in Greece or something at the moment. I mean, he should step up. If he wants like a little bit of legacy, he should at least step up. And I'd say it's a zombie government, but there aren't any brains to eat around Westminster. Little joke there about zombies. But yeah, they are sort of hobbling into the next.
Yeah, and then we'll see how that's going to affect the general election. But Dane, I mean, do you think there's any chance that Sunak has now, or do you think it's pretty much that's it? Liz Truss is our next prime minister.
I mean, he still has a chance. I think this leadership race has typified the argument for the lesser of two evils. In this instance, I've probably never seen two candidates that personify evil as much as I've seen in this particular Tory leadership race.
You're stating out your political.
You've never seen a politician as evil as Liz Truss or Rishi Sunak.
Well,
I mean, Rishi Sunak's like the nicest guy I've ever. I mean, I actually met him once, like briefly, but he's like super nice. He's terrible, like economic policies taken straight from Jeremy Corbyn. But you know, he's definitely. I mean, I'd say maybe Putin, Darth Vader, somebody like that, maybe a bit worse.
Yeah, but he hasn't met Darth Vader.
Yeah, I've never met Darth Vader or Vladimir Putin, but I know that Vladimir Putin does ride a horse bareback with his chest out, and Darth Vader has the power of the Force. So they have applicable skills in other industries, and you know, maybe if politics haven't worked out for them, there are other vocations they can return to. Whereas I don't think that Liz Truss is good at anything other than being a tribute act from Margaret Thatcher, and maybe that's what we're seeing here.
But that's what we need right now. I mean, if you go to a village fete, you don't want to see an actual band doing their own songs because it's going to be terrible. You want to see, you know, a Queen tribute band, and I think right now the political equivalent of a Queen tribute band would be great. A Margaret Thatcher tribute band.
I think a Queen tribute band would probably be a better candidate than Liz Truss, if I'm quite honest with you.
And they'd be the champions.
Rishi, if you're watching, maybe take up Dane's little ideas there. Get on a horse.
Yeah.
Get a Darth Vader thing out. It might help you a little bit.
Instead of riding a horse bareback, he could ride a bare horseback.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you very much. With inflation,
which is really what Putin should have done when you think about it, really. That would have been like the national animal.
I'm sure he's a big fan. With inflation and prices seemingly going ever upwards, it's nice to see a graph in the Friday's Financial Times that has a downward slope, unless you're a student right now.
Yeah, so students are apparently having trouble getting into university because top A-level grades in England, Wales and Northern Ireland have fallen from the record highs of the past 2 years as exam assessments return to pre-pandemic standards. I mean, this is over lockdown, you know, we had 2 years of teachers just sitting in front of Netflix. And, you know, it's not like they really bust their chops anyway, but they're just phoning in, just tossing out the A-stars willy-nilly. I'm assuming, I've got no idea. This is just my idea of teaching I've made up in my head. So now this year they've had to return to actually being in school, and they've missed, you know, these kids have missed 2 years of schooling, and it's just not the same if you're not in there getting, you know, frowned at by a teacher. You're not applying yourself as hard. So they're doing terribly, and also there's a backlog of people, of university applications, people who took years out, you know, to wait before applying. So the competition is really intense to get into university now. I mean, the good thing is for them that university is completely pointless, and you should learn a trade and possibly become a stand-up comedian. Save yourself about 180 grand's worth of debt.
I wouldn't recommend it for anybody. But there's an indication that the number of top grades fell more sharply in private schools, which suggests that perhaps, Dane, people get what they pay for.
I mean, yeah, I would say it's exactly the same. People do get what they pay for, as Felicity Huffman proved in the States by financially incentivizing college admission boards in order for her child to attend, despite not wanting to do so in the first place. I would say it is a real issue in terms of the fact that, but at the same time, you know, that we make education a commodity. And, you know, while I think that might make me appear to be a lefty or socialist, I think that education, like all industries, should be somewhat meritocratic, and you should be able to do well. And we as a society should identify the academic potential of people and reward them accordingly. It'd be very nice if we did live in a society whereby the harder you worked and the better you were suited for a job, you'd be able to be admissible for that job or that place in university. However, we live in a country and we are close allies of a country where both of the leaders of said nations have never showed their exam results. Although they may have demonstrated what their predicted grades would have been.
I think Boris is, I mean, for all the criticism of him, he's maybe, you know, lazy, doesn't apply himself, but he is intelligent. I mean, he writes loads of books. Can't write books unless you're smart. I'm assuming.
Yeah,
I'm just basing that.
I can't even read books.
I've made up this idea of what books are.
It depends
on...
who's reading the books when you think about it as well. And I'd be very worried about a Prime Minister who's still taking the time to write books and where he's finding the time outside of all the parties that he was attending previously as well.
And children.
And all the children. So I guess if the book is The Joy of Sex, then I imagine he's very well versed in that particular type of literature.
He's a polymath.
Yes, indeed. And I will...
He's a poly something. I would have said polyamorous more than polymath, but...
I'll go look up what that means in the interval. To The Independent now. And Dane, it seems like I'm not the only fan of getting my excuses in early.
Yes, Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London, has warned of a potential rise in violence over the cost of living crisis, which has been a continuing story within British press for obvious reasons. Following the pandemic, we have seen a sharp rise, and we are potentially heading towards one of the deepest recessions that we've had in a long time. Sadiq Khan said that he is now implicating policies in order to remedy the potentiality for a rise in particularly urban youth violence by investing as much as $2 million into youth schemes, which comes along at a time where we're seeing inflation rising to 10.1%, which is a 40-year high, which will lead to 24% of Britons not being able to pay their bills, which means 1/4 of the population falling below the poverty line, which will in turn potentially lead to a rise in violence, particularly amongst urban youth.
Well, so Sadiq Khan is making this correlation between poverty and violence, but 1/4 of murders this year have been related to gang culture. Do you think that there is a direct correlation there?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This is Sadiq Khan just getting his excuses in early. He knows that crime and violence is going to surge in London, even more that it's already gone up, since lockdown. So he's getting his excuses in now. He's saying, oh, it's going to go up because of inflation. It's like, because, oh, man, every gang member, checks the back of the Financial Times to see what the inflation rate is before they go out and decide to stab somebody to death. No, this is absolute nonsense. He knows the police have taken their eye off the ball. They're too busy painting rainbows and arresting people for tweets. They're actually, I think the Met Police is in special measures at the moment. The head of the Met has had to step down. So yeah, I mean, this is Sadiq. Just the buck stops with him, and he needs to not talk about, oh, we're putting this money into schemes and stuff. Get the police to do their job and slash all the nonsense, all the form filling, all the the equality, diversity, and inclusion, environmental, social, governmental rules, all this HR nonsense. Slash that so they can get out there and do their jobs.
Well, it's interesting that he talks about it threatens to reverse progress, but critics would say, what progress?
Yeah.
It's not like we're starting from an amazing position anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'd argue that this has been a problem that has been massively exacerbated by the austerity measures that were taken following the financial crash in 2008. And I would argue to both of you, if you juxtapose that with the current, I'd say, social climate, most children have been weaned on an idea that their self-worth is directly linked to their material and capital wealth. And a lot of well, there you go. If you believe so, then if that is
so you better get a job.
Well, I mean, you could get a job, but I would argue that if you are able to enjoy much higher profit margins from being involved in gang activity, it's very hard to provide an incentive for people to leave that kind of life.
So we need to incentivise them not to do that by getting the police out there and cracking some domes.
Yeah, I mean, but the police are also very busy with their own crimes, as we saw with the resignation of Cressida Dick following the murder of Sarah Everard. So, they got their hands full with their own internal affairs, I would say. And again, going back to the point you correctly made with our first story, Josh, you get what you pay for. And if you are having funding cut by the police, it means that potential applicants to the force may not be able to handle the task that we want them to undertake.
Well, police funding has gone up, but the problem is that they're hobbled by all this legislation and also by hate speech legislation, which means they've got to go and respond to things like somebody feeling upset or offended because they saw a tweet or a meme. We've literally got people getting arrested over memes now, which is a nonsense.
I agree with you, but I don't necessarily argue that they've been hobbled by it in terms of that's the reason why what's going on in the streets.
Would you say destroyed?
No, I would maybe use a lesser word.
Made incapable.
Not helping.
Yeah,
is what I would say.
or enabled to, be distracted from their duties of reducing youth violence. But I mean, that is down to the police's choice. Like all the police I watched in films will just do things. They wouldn't do things by the book. They would take the law into their own hands and they would solve things. So maybe we need more mavericks, more loose cannons.
More mavericks, more lethal weapon.
Yeah.
I'm definitely being facetious. I want to make sure that is very clear. But I think that it comes to politics.
I thought it was a great idea.
Yeah, I just wanted to reel you guys in. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. That's how you reel them in.
Well, it's you like watching cop movies where they rigorously follow the rules and don't get any results and respond to somebody who's upset about a tweet.
Well, the way the world is moving, a lot of cybercrime is building, so I guess maybe a lot of policemen are trying to build their bones for what they perceive to be future markets. But I personally feel that prevention is better than cure, and I think when it comes specifically to the phenomenon of youth violence, a reduction in social and youth services might be one of the reasons why we are seeing this rise in crime, or we are anticipating a rise in crime. Although, I also have to say, I do take umbrage with the idea that all of these increases in social ills are being directed towards the youth, because as we've seen in one instance of a very violent stabbing of a 87, but the perpetrator or the suspect was 44.
Yeah.
And speaking as someone who's tried to stay down with the youth, once you go north of 40, there's nothing youth or cool or urban about you.
Yeah.
Fair enough. You look pretty good for your age. Friday's Guardian now, and my diet is over, and I'm looking forward to visiting this place perhaps a bit more often than this guy, Leo.
So this is Rishi Sunak. He made a bit of a gaffe on Breakfast TV this morning. So he was photographed at a branch of McDonald's where he struggled slightly to make a contactless card payment. How ironic that the Chancellor, or former Chancellor, should have trouble with payment. But he was asked by hosts on This Morning, that Andy Peters and Rochelle Humes. He says, I went to McDonald's, I always go to McDonald's. If I'm with my daughters, then we get the wrap. If it's my eldest daughter, if it's with her, I get the wrap with hash browns and everything in it. It's what we do. But apparently McDonald's stopped selling that wrap in March 2020. So that was like 2.5 years ago. And they tried to cover it by saying, well, he's barely seen his kids in the last 2.5 years. So that was the last time he had a meal with his daughter. So he's now a negligent parent.
I mean, if you're vying for Tory leadership and you show evidence that you kind of lie about your whereabouts and neglect your children, that actually puts you in good stead to, take up the mantles of the previous leader.
Yeah, it's good precedent.
I mean, Dave, we do seem to love seeing our politicians trying and failing to function in the real world. I'm thinking of the sort of Ed Miliband unable to eat a sandwich. Although Jacob Rees-Mogg, is there something to be said for them just admitting that they're not part of... if Jacob Rees-Mogg would just go, what's McDonald's?
Well, Jacob Rees-Mogg doesn't eat any food. He sleeps upside down in a coffin. You know? Like that guy just gets nourished by moonlight.
So and blood platelets, and I imagine working class tears are fed to him intravenously in order to restore him from his Lazarus chamber.
So if you were sort of running a politician's campaign, you'd say, look, mate, just forget about it.
Well, I think the first thing I would say to Rishi Sunak is if you were genuinely interested in endearing yourself to the working class, you wouldn't have gone to McDonald's, which has actually moved in market position as far as takeaways go with their kind of autumnal finish and their contactless ordering. I would know because my career is going very well. But he would have been better off going to one of the metropolitan chicken shops that we find dotted around London and being served by South Indians, which would have been able to allow him to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, which I believe is how they prepare their chicken. So I think it would have been very helpful. But it's quite sad that, first of all, that his older daughter's the only one that gets a hash brown, which makes the story initially quite dubious.
Favouritism, right?
Yeah, which really we don't necessarily need unless she is in a higher income bracket, which would be then conducive to his narrative.
Surely he could afford hash browns for everybody in McDonald's. For everybody in London.
Yeah, and he could probably write it down against his wife's tax bill that he's going to have to pay now.
Yeah, it would definitely help. I mean, it definitely shows you the depth of the crisis of the public relations employees that are working on behalf of Rishi Sunak, and also tells you what happens if you give your chauffeur and butler the day off. But it's so ironic and I think maybe poetic to see somebody who encourages us all to eat out to help out, but has no idea how to do it. And I'm reminded of Diane Abbott when we saw her basically flummox herself trying to work out very simple mathematics. But I would go far to
tie her
argue...
shoelaces.
And tie her shoelaces. Although I reckon she wears quite a nice moccasin, something quite orthopedic.
On the wrong feet.
The woman slays, Leo. I won't hear anything else. That being said, I mean, you know, as alien as that does seem, I would argue that only an alien wouldn't know the McDonald's menu for at least 2 years. There's no way you would know that. So
okay. You got to pick something. Pick something that's always going to be on the menu. Big Mac. I'll have a Big Mac.
Big constant. Go for fries. Just go for fries.
Right, let's finish this section with Friday's Sun. And Dane, it seems like we're not the only country that doesn't like its Prime Minister to party.
Absolutely. We have a leaked vid which shows Finnish PM Sanna Marin, who is one of the youngest world leaders at the moment, at 36 years old. I think she is only second to...
third, I think.
Oh, yes, third, yeah, to the leaders of
Chile
and...
Chile?
I want to say...
Montenegro.
Yeah, Montenegro.
I think we've got a video that we quickly see. Let's have a look at her. There she is.
Yeah.
That's Sam.
Looks like one of those nurses' TikToks.
Wow. She's having a good time. She's running the country. She's having a little dance. She's showing off her armpits quite a lot.
I saw that video earlier today, and there's people in that video who, I'm not joking, are on drugs. I mean, I don't want to get sued or anything, but they look like they're on drugs. And it looks like, it's not that there's a lot of people there, it's like a house party in Dumfries in 1994. But yeah, man, some of those people are absolutely
That's a very
melting.
specific reference you've made there. I feel like you recognise some of the attendees, and there's almost an air of resentment that you weren't invited to this particular gathering. Is there a reunion you missed out on? No,
well, it's great to see some politicians, you know, being inspired by Hunter Biden and his way of partying. I just want to see one of them arguing with a prostitute over the price of crack cocaine.
Okay, that's what always goes for you. That's always how your parties end. But just the German newspaper, they called her the coolest politician in the world. But do we really want our politicians to be cool, Leo?
No. No. That's what I like.
So that's why you should vote Starmer.
Or Truss. We're going to have battle of the nerds.
No, we definitely. Let's go for it.
I think it's a bit harsh to refer to someone like Liz Truss as a nerd, because nerds are characteristically intelligent.
She is intelligent.
Is she intelligent?
She's dead intelligent.
The first part of that statement is right. I mean, maybe dead, adjectively speaking.
No, she's alive as well. She's alive and she's intelligent.
You've become such a fanboy over the last few weeks.
I like the idea of lower taxes.
That's what you care about, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, well...
I mean, if you can trust that she can orchestrate such a thing, because in my encounters with Liz Truss and the sound bites I've gotten, her priority seems to be cheese. Now, if it turns out that the cheese she's referring to is cheddar and it's a colloquial term for money, then maybe you have a point there. But if I know Liz Truss and I know my Margaret Thatcher tribute acts, I very much doubt that her concern is ensuring lower taxation for small to medium enterprises.
Well, she got a lot of Brexit trade deals sorted after Brexit, which, you know, looked like it was going to be an impossible task.
I mean, there's still quite a bit to do, I would say, at this stage. But, you know, she's... I would say if I had to choose who to party with, I would go with the Finnish Prime Minister.
Yeah.
She's been very well supported by constituents and by her country, as well as the Swedish Prime Minister have been able, as neutral countries, to join NATO as a result of her work. But there has been some contention. I will say that, you know, she was lamented for the fact that upon being in contact with people with COVID, she went on to go to dinner and drinks with a personal phone, and so wasn't able to receive the alerts.
Yeah, that was her excuse. And it's like she said she didn't have her government phone on her. And it's like, you're the Prime Minister.
I know, but
you should have your phone on you.
Leo, you have already said that you think it is a natural part of interactions with associates of politicians to have arguments over the price of crack cocaine. You can't do that with a business phone, Leo. It's a sheer practicality there, and that kind of pragmatism is what I want from a cool Prime Minister.
Fair enough. Yeah. Protect yourself legally. Well, that's all for part one. Coming up in part two, we've got illiterate job ads, literate drag queens, and a story that's maybe makes us ask it's time for a raise, Leo. Anyway, see you in two.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrow.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Josh Howie, and unless some Freaky Friday action happened in the interval, there's still Leo Kearse and Dane Baptiste. Is that too niche a reference?
No, but I haven't transmitted into the body of my 14-year-old son.
Okay.
I don't have a 14-year-old son.
Well, I thought it was more that into each other. Anyway.
Oh, that'd be funny.
Let's kick off this section with Friday's Daily Mail. And Leo, are you tempted to apply for this job?
So, well, the NHS has been slammed as sexist and woke after this job ad.
Again?
Yes. I mean, it's a nightly occurrence on Headliners. But they put out a job ad for a senior role, over 100 grand, in which the candidate preferably identifies as female. Whatever that means. It seems so anybody could go for it. So this is illegal and discriminatory against male applicants, apparently, as set out in the Government Guidance and Equality Act, according to the Men and Boys Coalition chief executive, who's called...
That's an unfortunate name.
It sounds too much like the Man-Boy Love Association.
Exactly. It really sounds a number to me too, yeah.
But I'm guessing from the tone of this, it's a slightly more reputable organisation than that. But yeah, I mean, this is absolutely true, as well as being discriminatory. Although it kind of isn't discriminatory because anybody can identify as female. You just say you identify as female, but you get this a lot in comedy. You know, everybody wants to, have some sort of diverse gender, woo-woo person on their bill. It's just the flavour of the decade. And so they put these ads up saying, we're looking for somebody who, female identifying or trans or whatever. And it's like, I always apply saying, yeah, I'm female identifying. And I never get the gig because people think that I'm joking. But how come I'm discriminated against for female identifying, but other people aren't? I don't understand what the rules are. Well, but also all this stuff, all this sort of job ads where they're like, oh, we want specifically just this person, no pale stale males or whatever. It makes an organisation less effective because you're drawing on a smaller pool of people. So it's like saying, oh, go down to the shops and get me the largest vegetable, but it's got to be a tomato. It's like, you're not going to get the largest vegetable.
No. Well, just reading the job description, it says that...
I don't want to jump in there, but tomato is a fruit, and that... I don't know if that is.
But it identifies as
trans vegetable. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. That's what I said to call them. You say tomato, I say trans vegetable. Now everybody on the same page.
I was going to say, but the job application, it says you want someone with the efficient delivery of the day-to-day operational management. Now, Dane, surely both men and women, or whatever you identify as, can do this ridiculous business speak.
I'd say so as well. I mean, I think the fact that it does say preferably someone who identifies is how they've been able to cover themselves legally. I personally feel like while I do agree that jobs which carry this level of gravity should be meritocratic and whoever is best for the job should be, especially when you're dealing with an institution like the NHS, until it's privatised, I guess. However, realistically speaking, there does seem to be a large amount of underrepresentation within these institutions, and, the NHS is a particularly nuanced institution whereby you may need people who have particular sets of skills or may have a particular aesthetic because of the high level of human interaction that is required for the role.
Are you saying there's differences between men and women?
Predominantly.
Right. Yeah. That sounds regressive.
That's what they said in the 50s. Predominantly there would be differences between men and women, but I guess that's also based on how those people choose to identify. But then I'm not a member of the NHS, but I'm very sure that they have an idea of what they're doing, and there is probably a good reason to justify all of this. I think if the NHS was privatised, we may not see any kind of incentive which does encourage a diversity of applicants.
Yeah. Oh no, this is happening in private companies as well. This nonsense where HR departments have so much power and they have all these targets and all the rest of it to try and narrow down the fields of people they're picking from, and it's basically old-fashioned discrimination but updated for 2022.
I just think it's sad that seeing two comedians who disagree with the idea that someone can transition or identify as a woman in order to get a great job. In the wake of Robin Williams and Mrs. Doubtfire, I would have thought that you two would know better. That sometimes it takes for someone to identify as a woman for the greater good.
Well, actually, I've got something to reveal on this show. That's how I got this job.
Oh, well.
I'm a woman.
Right.
No, that was... OK, that didn't work at all. Yeah. Fair enough. Thanks, guys, for staring at me.
In a way, as you began to unbutton your shirt, like Leo and I, as soon as you said you identify as a woman, we were looking, but then we thought, hey...
Wait a minute.
Her eyes are up there.
Yeah. That's a very bald woman.
Yeah.
Right. Staying with the male.
Quite creepy.
Wish I hadn't done that. Dave, whilst my kids love it when I dress up, especially with this link as well, when I dress up in heels, wig and a sparkly number for bedtime stories, not everyone's so happy.
No, not everyone is happy. In fact, there has been a number of issues around the area of East Anglia. Hundreds of rival protesters for both sides have held demonstrations outside the library as drag queen Auntie Titania reads stories to children. Supporters with transgender flags clashed with the far-right group Patriotic Alternative during the latest Story Hour event. This has been going on for a long time. The trans activist and drag queen Auntie Titania already previously had a cancellation on one of their shows and has now chosen to grandstand with a large amount of support from the LGBTQ community.
Plus, Dane. Got to put that plus in there.
Plus. That is very true. So the LGBTQ plus community, and they have been met with resistance from far-right groups such as the Patriotic Alternative, who believe that children should be children. There has also been a number of accusations from this initiative for having drag queens reading stories to children of paedophilia and child molestation, although there has been no factual basis.
Oh, no, there are some...
Well, I was going to say, look, Leo, that drag queens all involved in this particular project in the UK have all been getting DBS checks. So,
yeah.
I mean, is there really a problem here?
Well, in the States, there have been at least two that I know of, people involved in Drag Queen Story Hour who then, turned out were paedophiles, basically.
That being said, Leo, let's not act as if we've not, in this country in particular...
Where's this going?
We've proven... not yourself. No. I mean, I'm sure your DBS check has come through clear on this particular station. That's why you're here. But I'm just saying, I think it's very dangerous to try and create some kind of conflation between drag queens who are maybe presenting...
Oh, no, I'm not making a conflation. I'm just saying, why do they want to do it in front of kids? It's an adult, sexualised form of entertainment that's suited to cabaret clubs. That's what it started out.
You say that, but why do you
want to do it in front of kids?
I have one word that I could combat that with, and that would be pantomime, where typically a lot of the time children are entertained, particularly during the summer holidays, and in a number of roles, fairy godmothers, these are played by men, which in where you could argue are men.
And it's not sexualised, and also the kids are a long distance. It's very hard to actually sexually abuse a child over a 100-foot gap in a theatre. So this is, this is much more intimate. It's adult. And I'm I'm baffled by the fact that it's now considered far right to keep adult sexualised entertainment away from children.
I think
where did that become far right? I mean,
the problem comes from patriotic alternative, where like even if you are trying to provide a safe space for kids, like there's nothing patriotic about that. There should be a global.
Yeah, it's weird that they're called patriotic alternative.
And I think that's probably where they've gone wrong, is that they've said they're both patriotic and alternative since
they've named themselves like a sort of right-wing supremacist, far-right supremacist
of a worse name.
But what they're doing, I mean, it's very Mumsnet. I mean, they should have named themselves Mumsnet Live. That would have been a better name for them than patriotic alternative.
I think that's taken. A sad story now in Friday's Guardian about the decline of coins. What are people going to throw at me when I'm on stage, Leo?
Well, they'll still have pint glasses.
Or trans vegetables. Those always work. We'll go with a classic.
More than 23 million people in the UK used virtually no cash last year, and apparently notes and coins will account for just 6% of payments within a decade, according to this report by the banking body UK Finance. And it's prompting concern that millions of people could be left behind. Well, particularly Rishi, who always struggles to pay with a contactless card. He actually tried to hold his credit card under the barcode scanner at the petrol station.
But even I understand in the McDonald's, they had an Instagram photo of saying, I did it, fit it. And actually someone worked out that he didn't do it because it had already come up with the bill had already, so he'd done it in the wrong order.
It's just worse when you think about it, because McDonald's actually deliver now. And for someone who's supposed to be in a very important job, maybe it should be brought to you as opposed to you going out and paying for it.
But this could be a problem for older people who maybe aren't as familiar with, because I pay for stuff. I've got a card, and I've got to authenticate it on my phone and put my PIN in on my phone. And it's difficult. My dad only uses a phone for making phone calls, and he uses cash for everything. So I think there is going to be older generations are going to have trouble with this shift. And also, I love cash. There's just something about cash. It feels good in your hand, and
rubbing it on your body.
Yeah, rubbing it on your rolling around in it on your bed, and all those 2 pences. But we're going to have that taken away from us. And also, what it's like being a comedian. If you get paid cash, it's like it just feels good.
La 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 la. I don't know what you're talking about. That never happened.
For someone who doesn't want to pay tax, you are very vocal about your cash flow. I must say, Leo.
Well, it's gone. Now everybody pays. Now everybody pays backs.
Well, I mean, it can be a tough one. I think it might be a natural progression. Obviously, I understand that older people are more vulnerable, but then at the same time, the fact that if we know that the same elderly and vulnerable people do have liquid cash available, maybe where they're living, or maybe in a care home, that can make them more of a target for criminality. So maybe them being cashless might actually ensure their safety. But this tends to be a natural progression at the way we're going. That there's less and less liquid money in circulation. We're moving more and more towards biometrics in order for us to complete commercial exchanges. So I guess it's just really just one of the things that's going where it's going. I mean, at one point, there used to be a £1 note, and there is no longer one, and so we just have to kind of learn to acclimatise.
And the biometric thing and digital cash is really worrying, because it means the government can put rules and restrictions around how you spend your cash. Cash can be given a time limit, so if you get paid, the money's got a time limit, it's got to be spent. It can be set to a certain geographical area or certain products, or you can just be completely cut off, like the people who funded the truckers in Canada. A woman donated, she's a single mother, donated $50 to the truckers because she agreed with their cause, like a lot of people did. It was a valid thing. They weren't doing anything horrible, and the government stepped in and cut off her access to banking and her ability to raise her kids.
One solution, Leo, is to get rid of the cash and have a real cashless society where we do exchange favours and in time. So it might be just the way
I'm not washing your car, Dean. I know you've been trying.
It's not that big, Leo, and you've got long arms. I just find you to be very selfish, but that's fine.
You guys can afford cars. Let's finish this section with a story from Friday's Telegraph that's pretty close to home. Leo, we're rich!
Yeah. So GBNews has secured £60 million of British pounds, by the way, in cash, of fresh investment as part of an ownership shake-up in which the Hollywood titan Warner Brothers Discovery has sold its stake in the fledgling news group. Actually, I know some people who work at GB News, And I've got some inside track. Apparently, GB News this week beat Sky News every day and beat BBC News as well at one point, which is amazing. I mean, it's growing and it's getting bigger.
Dane, you chose a good time to come along.
Timing is everything in the line of work that we're in, and I'm sure there's no coincidence between the fact that I have now arrived as a panelist on GB News and they've seen a massive injection of cash.
It's how we can afford you.
Well, you know, I don't come cheap, you know, and I want to make that very clear now while we are on the air that I am open and listening to offers, and I'm very receptive to bidding wars.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is on Twitter, it's been GB News has been trending with all these woke people saying, "Oh, look, GB News is doing terribly." For some reason, they think it's terrible that the stake has been offloaded to other investors, which seems bizarre. To me, I mean, like investments, change hands all the time. If other people come in and offer more money and pump more money into the business, it's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it is a very good thing to invest. And again, I guess I have to draw the attention to myself for appearing as a debutante on GB News, and it's all coming around at the same time. It can only lead to only positive trends for any shareholders that may be watching.
Well, you could argue that with GB News' success and how it's grown over the past 14 months, it really does seem to be the evidence that people want different perspectives, that actually we have widened the conversation, which was the whole remit in the first place, surely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you feel that the other channels are going to learn maybe a little bit and are already stepping into that, or do you think that they are getting it at all?
And also, there's so much comedy. Like Headliners is on every night on GB News. So so many comedians are getting a voice on GB News.
At least they used to until I showed up. Party's over, guys.
And Free Speech Nation as well, and Ministry of Offence. There's so much opportunity.
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to, obviously, despite the veneer that's given about GB News, that they have provided a platform for more innovative and more novel ideas in terms of having discussions and providing a discursive platform for people with different viewpoints to engage. And that's kind of what people want. I think people are sick of the polarising nature of social media and maybe some of the biases they see in some of the competitors of GB News. But if you want me to continue to endorse what we're doing
that's
here,
it. Stop there.
It, yeah.
That was a great advert.
That's a great advert.
Let's clip that up, everyone. Right, that's all for part two. Come back for the much sillier final section featuring cardboard police officers, governments pushing alcohol in its youth, and mountains with decent internet coverage. See you in two.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panelists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Josh Howie, and completing this YMCA cover band is Leo Kearse and Dane Baptiste. There we go, all the letters. So to Friday's Scottish Daily Express. And Dane, this is quite a disturbing story about one of our colleagues.
Very disturbing and very close to home. The story involves award-winning comedian, international comedian Elaine Miller, who says that free speech is under attack in Scotland. She has currently been at the Fringe and won awards for a comedy at said festival and has been called on as an expert in women's healthcare. She has been experienced a massive amount of vitriol from both colleagues and attendees of the festival as a result of her show Viva Your Vulva. The Whole Story, which is the name of the show, which was awarded 5 stars in the Scotsman, and basically references basically all things vaginal, for lack of a better expression, and has resulted in her having her free speech attacked and being spat on in the street by disgruntled attendees of the festival, who have also gone so far as to deface her posters at the festival with rainbows in support of the LGBTQ plus community.
I think it's more in support of the T plus rather than the LGB.
Fair. And maybe on the other side of the plus. But this does come as quite a shock and increasingly worrying in terms of attacks on free speech at the festival, following Jerry Sadowitz also having his show cancelled within the same time frame.
So, I mean, what do you think, Leo? Are we becoming a more intolerant industry? I mean, I say that
absolutely.
Really, it's a rhetorical question with half of my friends.
I should add, however, that Elaine herself has quoted and been saying, she did say that her show does reference trans men who do have the possession of vaginas, and it is relevant to them as well. So she has said
it's the second time we said that word. I haven't heard anything in my ears, so I'm assuming that we're okay with that.
She's basically an expert on vaginas. She's made...
Please stop. I don't know whether we can say it or not.
We can. It's a bodily part.
Right,
so she's made presentations on women's health in Parliament and authored academic papers on healthcare, so she knows what she's talking about. And then, she's doing this show, and it's coming from a positive angle. She wants to, say things like, so people are erasing the word women and replacing it with like ovary havers. Yeah. But then if you're, somebody who's new to the UK and you don't understand English as much, that's going to be a barrier to, everybody's going to know the word women, but you're not going to know what an ovary haver is. So you're going to miss out on healthcare information. And she's been spat on the street. She's been, decried and smeared by other comedians, and venue managers have told her to, change, editorialised and stepped in, like they did with Jerry Sadowitz, and told her to change aspects of her show because it could be perceived as transphobic. Yeah. And I think it's an absolute nonsense. Yeah, but the scary thing for me, is amongst our peers. Yeah. The idea that the idea that we hold free speech is pretty high up there, I think, amongst all of us, until these certain issues, and then suddenly it's like a free-for-all. And there's been a lot of bullying online over the last few years, carried out by comedians. Yeah. And it's really horrible to see.
And the problem is, though, I'm not sure if all of the grandstanding and the kind of interpersonal attacks by comedians are fueled by them yearning for an egalitarian state. It is a solitary art form, and I think sometimes people pounce on any opportunity to villainize another member of the comedy community, whichever opportunity they take. I, however, don't think that the actions that have been taken by some of the attendees and some of Elaine's detractors are indicative of the collective sentiment of the trans community, although I wouldn't come onto this show and transplain. But I would say, I would say that there are a number of issues of elitism that transcend genders and sexual orientations that happens at the Fringe in the first place. And I think sometimes any excuse to observe kind of marginalisation is done very often and really has nothing to do with gender identity. Speaking as someone who identifies as black, apparently that's the way you have to say it now.
Oh, really? You can't just say I'm black?
I can say it, but it just leads I probably end up using a star, depending on who's critiquing the show. So, I can definitely speak on behalf of a number of marginalised groups when I say that the Fringe can be a very precarious situation to be in, because if your narrative doesn't match the sentiment of the critical class, then we all get bumped at the end of the day.
And the sentiment at the Fringe this year is definitely very pro, non-binary, gender questioning, trans and stuff. In fact, I saw a clip of a transgender comedian on the Chorlton Fast Fringe where they get loads and loads of... And she came out and she had to reference that she wasn't the first trans comedian they'd said. You know, out of the 4 comedians they'd seen, they'd already seen another one.
Well, good luck in Edinburgh, everybody. For those of you still lucky enough to afford petrol out there, The Telegraph has a story you might sympathise with, Leo.
Yeah, so Lewis Hamilton has said that he hates speed limits, basically. He confessed in an interview that he detests driving on ordinary roads. That sounds elitist.
With ordinary people.
Yeah, he doesn't just, I mean, obviously, he gets to go on some of the best roads, you know, the Fabergé eggs of roads, but it's not because he hates ordinary people, it's because he finds it stressful. And I think we can all, anybody who drives, you know, especially in London, can identify with this. There's, and they reference the network of 20-mile-an-hour zones that have been set up around the country. And Wales apparently is going to introduce 20 mile an hour as the standard for residential areas. So pretty much, you know, everywhere that isn't a motorway is going to be 20 miles an hour. And it is, you know, it's murder. Just as they criminalise driving slowly along a road because you could be threatening to a woman, you know, they're bringing the speed limit down to that. So you've got to, like, there's a narrow sliver of acceptable speed. You know, you've got to drive between 19.5 and 20 miles an hour.
Well, there's a sort of B story to this Telegraph story.
Yeah.
Also about new policemen, cardboard.
Oh yeah, so this
whatever.
Yeah, so there's basically this police force has. They were probably sick of police going for donuts and stuff, so they've made new policemen, more effective policemen, out of cardboard and stuck them by the side of the road at the cost of £223 each, apparently.
Okay, well, let's
which
see how that murder rate goes up.
I don't know what cardboard they're using, but I think people will quickly learn that, you know, criminals will learn that cardboard policemen can't actually run after them and arrest them, and they'll
you're giving criminals a lot of credit there. Friday's Independent now with a story that maybe we need to set up a boys' trip to Japan, Dane.
It could be very possible, Josh. This story involves Japan's tax agency, which is encouraging the younger population to drink more alcohol. Japan has dealt with a deepening crisis of population reduction due to the fact they have an ageing population and have had a very significantly reduced birth rate over the last decade or so. This has been further exacerbated by the pandemic, which they have found to be sobering and very much changed attitudes towards drinking. So they've introduced a new initiative, which they refer to as Sake Viva, to encourage more drinking amongst
You don't want to do that in a Japanese accent? You're not going to You leave it for next.
I'm going to leave it, especially because it looks like it's a combination of words, because Viva is Spanish.
Yeah,
means sake,
yeah,
so,
that's right.
You know, nice, but I jumped over that hurdle, Josh. But yeah, I think they've asked there's no restrictions to entries for the Sake Viva initiative for anyone that can think of new and more novel ways to encourage more drinking amongst people from the ages of 20 to 39, some of those involving use of the metaverse.
Well, I guess it looks like they're hoping alcohol is going to help increase their low birth rate. If Japan's outside our budget, then The Guardian is kindly suggesting another location, Leo.
Yeah, so in the Netherlands, the town centre of Utrecht, which is a city there, has done a mock-up of an ecstasy store. So in America, we've seen cannabis decriminalised, and then, you know, it's sold in shops there. And actually, I was over in what's it called, Austria, and they had a cannabis shop there that wasn't selling cannabis yet, but in anticipation of cannabis being deregulated. I guess the same kind of thing. So this is a fake ecstasy shop to show that you can walk in and see what it would be like if you bought ecstasy in a shop, because they want to decriminalise it. And they're also looking at cocaine, psilocybin, mushrooms and LSD, because there's so much violence and criminality linked to the Netherlands is the sort of centre for world centre for ecstasy and amphetamine production, so it's fueling a lot of horrible criminal behaviour there. So yeah, ecstasy isn't really that dangerous compared to other drugs. Neither are magic mushrooms. Like, magic mushrooms used to be sold openly in London.
Well, I wouldn't like to take magic mushrooms and look at your shirt.
Don't need to.
That would do my head in. Dane, do you think it's a good idea to legalise ecstasy? Do you think there's any...
I actually do think it's a good idea. I think I'm very liberal in terms of the policy towards narcotics. I think we are very much trailing behind in the UK compared to a lot of other nations. Like Denmark has the area of Christiania, where there's a zone that's almost dedicated to decriminalisation and the procurement of drugs. Obviously, Amsterdam is another place, Utrecht, as we mentioned before, and even in places like Spain, where having cocaine for personal use is somewhat decriminalised. And I think we need to just basically get on that wave and do the same if we're going to, because one of the largest elements that fuels urban youth violence would be the drug trade. So if that were to be decriminalised and possibly taxed, then we could see an increase in our revenue streams and a reduction in our crime.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah. Also, I'd suggest a visit to Utrecht.
And you get better quality drugs as well.
Well, this show is ending on a high. Sorry. But I'm interested in Utrecht because it's got the best board game road in the whole road.
They also have a comedy festival too.
They've also got a comedy, so they've got drugs, and then you can play a board game, pick up your face, and it sounds pretty good.
Right.
I'm just wondering if it's going to make their tourism worse because they already have such a massive problem with people going over there.
Drug tourism, yeah.
Drug tourism and whatnot, yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, look, that's all we have time for. Thank you to my brilliant guests, Leo Kearse and Dane Baptiste. Dane, I very much hope that you come back. Headliners will be back
Saturday.
tomorrow, 11 o'clock, when I'll be joined by Nick Dixon and Lewis Schaefer. Bye.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
On Mark Dolan Tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate, and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for big guests, big opinions, and a big